Hi,
Morning,
Kelly.
Anisha.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being a part of Starting Trouble and thanks for meeting me today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Happy Friday. Hope you're well. Um, can
Same with
we
you.
can we start um, by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself, about who you are, and since this is about moms who work, about your kids.
Sure. So my name is Kelly Bailey. Within the last year, I kind of stepped away from a full-time position to try to figure out a work-life family balance. But my career, if you will, started, so many years ago, but I think really started and kind of took off in education about 10 years ago when I went with a startup company. I was still fairly young, so I would say from an experience standpoint, there's plenty of things that I kind of dabbled in, but never really, got to it. And it really spurred my passion into education and all the things that I think are so great to change. And it also, working with a startup, helps you gain so many skills in such a short period of time because you're doing a lot of everything. There's no clear roles at the time when there's just a few people. That little startup, we purchased another sort of larger company that was struggling at the time.
Very
And
cool.
then that particular company was bought off by a more well-known company these days, which is Glass Technologies. So it was really interesting to be involved in that. And when I went with that group, they were still fairly small. I think I've never really worked with until that company started growing. I don't think I worked with more than 20 people at a time. I mean, there might have been like 10 people together.
Oh, wow.
Really fun. I think, I guess what I would be, or I think where I kind of gained most of my experience was I got to learn a lot about data, which makes me super excited. I'm one of those data geeks, and they are known for their job data.
Mm-hmm.
I also got to really understand marketing and business development and building relationships and strategic partnerships. So there's just been a lot of fun stuff, but what it really got me to do is work with higher ed institutions, universities, colleges, community colleges, and just really understand some of the struggles that they're having. Then adding into the mix my own kids, being focused so long on higher ed, I really honestly just did not think a thing about early childhood learning until I had kids. And I was a fairly young mom. So, I mean, I think I was.
Yeah, I'm sure you're still very, very young.
Well, thank you, but no. I think the original plan in my head was to get married at 30 and then kids and, have a career and all that. And it just didn't work out that way. So, I had kids probably even before I would say my career took off is when I started having children. And when they're young, you're not, I mean, again, the education part doesn't really come in. My two older ones now, I have three kids. I have an 8-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old daughter, and a 2-year-old son. He just turned 2 last week.
Mhm.
Um, Once they start getting into school, you really start to realize it. And my second daughter, I know I'm kind of just typical mom, kind of jumping all over the place, but my second daughter was just recently diagnosed with dyslexia. And it's put me in a really interesting place and understanding early childhood education
Oh
because
my goodness. Okay.
through the eyes of someone that has a learning disability, and it's not at all difficult, challenging, yes, but yeah, I mean, I feel like just being a mom and being a professional and kind of navigating through any sort of journey that you have is so interesting, and what you learn and what you pick up along the way and
Mhm.
understand. I mean, gosh, I feel it sounds funny to say it now. I feel so lucky that I've been able to see things from the inside, from the outside, and really understand. And I know we met through an education group, and it's just there's so many changes that I would love to see made, and it feels so passionate about. And once you become a mom, you realize you have to kind of dial back a little bit on what you may have had in mind. There's been plenty of, I've really wanted to start a company right before my third was born, and that kind of had to take a back seat. And but on the other hand, then I got to learn a lot about what's going on in the, K through 12 environment. And now I kind of find a big interest there. I don't know what that's going to turn into yet, but.
Right, right. No, I mean, the world is your oyster, if you will. But and you touched on this a little bit, and I want to talk about that more, since we are trying to understand the kind of challenges moms face. There's a career before children, and there is a career after. So from that perspective, you touched on this a little bit. Where was your career at before motherhood, and what went into your decision to keep on the path or to change it slightly to accommodate, having children and having to look after them as a primary caregiver, I'm assuming?
Well, like I said, I feel like I was a fairly young mom, mid-20s when I had my first, but it really, you know what, I did not make plans. I did not think about it. I think I was still so early. I was trying to find my place and kind of really get settled into where my career path was going to take me. In a way, though, that may have been the best thing for my situation, because I ended up having quite a challenging and interesting 10 years of, trying to have children and pregnancy. There's just nothing that I could have accounted for or planned for in that process. So maybe in a way, it all turned out the right way that I didn't make plans. I'm definitely a type A personality. I love to make plans, don't get me wrong, but I really didn't know what I was getting into. I'm the oldest in my family, but having kids, what that was going to look like. I didn't know how hard it was going to be. I've had, gosh, just to get a little personal, I've had 7 pregnancies. I have 3 children. All were high risk. I've been on an IV for every pregnancy the entire time. With my first, I was on bed rest in the hospital for 10 weeks, like trying to work on a BlackBerry back then,
Yes.
in the hospital. And yeah, I mean, I just don't really think there was a lot that I could have planned.
Prepared for. Yeah.
It honestly all worked out. And I would say, because I was still so early in my career, I really feel like I wasn't settled. And so I don't really think I took off and really got into that groove until after my second daughter turned about 1. That's when I really, I mean, it's just so funny because.
Oh, that's great. Because also you are more elastic when you're younger, right? You can bounce back from things. I think more and more women opt for having kids later in life, and the bouncing back is just so much harder. And I'm sure you must have experienced this a little bit, maybe with your 2-year-old.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was definitely harder this last time around, I have to say, because I was really into that groove. I was working a lot of hours. The company was becoming very successful. It was a lot harder to kind of step away and kind of take care of myself physically and the baby when I had to. But I think, sometimes I know most women, and I would get mad when people would say this to me too, but there's also a little bit I feel that we put on ourselves. This whole idea of mom guilt is so true. You kind of feel guilty if you're working, you feel guilty if you're taking care of the kids and not working, it's kind of back and forth, but yeah, there's a ton of pressure, and you kind of have to take it in stride and just say, I did not handle it well this last time. When I was in it, it took me a year to really realize that I was, he was almost 1 year old when I was like, wow, okay, I'm not doing a great job at work. I'm not doing a great job at home. This needs to
get more help. I need to get more support.
Yeah. Right. But, it does work out. And I think once I had that realization and really kind of had the opportunity to say, okay, let's back off. Let's figure this out. It doesn't have to be so daunting. And I think making yourself, it already feels like a guilty situation. Just putting that on yourself doubly. I really try my hardest, and I struggle with it just like everyone does. I'm really trying my hardest now, though, not to make myself upset about it anymore.
I'm glad to hear it. So, I mean, we've talked about like being hard on yourself is like one of the challenges, I guess. But what were your top 3 challenges as a working mom, and have you learned from them? How have you learned? Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Well, I think, like I said earlier, I'm really a type A personality, major type A.
Is it a
I'm,
problem now?
I was just such an overachiever. I think if I didn't have a family and children, I'd probably be a workaholic. I mean, I just wanted to do my best. And if that meant working 80 hours a week, I would do that. And so my hardest challenge was making yourself step back, because I just felt like I wasn't doing my best.
Mm,
But sometimes, you have to really, and I mean, I think this is when you do have a family, you have to kind of think through, there are needs that you have outside of work. And probably it was a good thing for me and a good learning experience for me to be able to step back and relax and be with my family, and also understand that that doesn't mean that I can't be successful and do things that I want to do in the workplace. And there were times where, I mean, it's always going to be challenging, because, you do have to sometimes even say no to opportunities because you know that it might not work for the family. I would say, maybe like rounding that out, just making a decision for more people than just yourselves it's a hard transition to do that.
right, right. And then as you've tackled all these challenges and learned from them apparently, and sometimes, like you said, even after having two kids, the third was still even like you made it harder for yourself for some reason, even after having gone through giving birth to two children. Suddenly you were so hard on yourself at the third. So it's something you just have to be constantly aware of, I'm guessing. So in all of this, what's been, if there has been, what's been your favorite career mistake as a working mom? And like, how did you fix it? How did you learn from it? I mean, not
Yeah, I mean, this is by far and away not my most favorite mistake, but definitely the largest mistake. It wasn't fun at the time. Was really not standing up for myself during a negotiation for a promotion.
Oh, okay.
And just really not, I mean, I think in amongst that, it was not reading the fine print of an employment contract, but that's a whole other story. It was just really thinking that I wasn't worthy because I was a mom. I think you get a little bit of pressure and feeling that, because I have external responsibilities, and family responsibilities, that you do, like I was saying, you kind of doubly put that guilt on yourself because you feel it. There's no question about it. People treat you differently. And not everyone is like this, so I don't want to, generalize, but I definitely felt a lot more of that when I did become a mom in the workplace. And I really didn't, I let myself buy into that. And I thought, maybe I am not worthy of this promotion or not worthy of negotiating this because I can't give it my all. But that's kind of an unfair way to think about it.
Yeah.
I learned a very hard lesson, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I really was able to, it took me a couple of years and leaving that situation to realize that just because I mean, I think we're actually better when we become parents, because there's so much you have to deal with and so much you have to learn from that you never would in the workplace. As a professional, I believe you become stronger.
Yeah.
You can handle situations, you can be more patient, you can not worry about things because you don't have time.
Better with candy,
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so. Sometimes you learn these, hard lessons, but I would say that just you're still worthy. You're still a great professional, strong woman. I mean, it's just one of those things. And again, not a favorite, but definitely the hardest.
No, and I think that's one of the things that we want to try and talk about more. And so there's two sides to the story. One is if we approach motherhood with this sense of, okay, I'm suddenly less, it just lets corporations and businesses and HR get away with a lot more than they would otherwise. On the other hand, it is also, because you just suck it up and you get on with it and things like that. I think that makes for a very unhealthy workplace in general, because what people need to realize is that parenthood is something that is important for the workplace to recognize, and it
Mhm.
isn't just motherhood. Even the men suffer.
Right.
Their relationships suffer if they cannot give a little bit on the work side and help out on the home front.
Mhm.
Uh, and just overall, that those are very strong reasons for a decline in productivity, a decline in efficiency of people in the workplace. And of course, nobody who stays at work, I mean, at least that's my belief, nobody who stays at work like 16, 17 hours a day is really being effective every second of every hour
No.
of that time. You're wasting a lot of time, and parents are just better at managing time. They're more empathetic. They are better at understanding and leading and mentoring. So yeah, I mean, we have to begin with ourselves, as you said. Not somehow consider ourselves weaker as a result of being mothers. But and then it also has to be backed up with a change in the workplace, I think.
I cannot agree with you more. It's something that, going through the situation that I went through, I've become really interested in just understanding how, we just need more and more companies out there that are yeah, right, that are supportive. There's just so much, and there's just so much that goes into having children, raising children. You know, if there isn't a support structure, and that, just making that situation more stressful than it already is, I just don't see how that's a win-win. I mean, if you're an owner of a company, you want to still have talented
That's
workers.
very important from a corporate social responsibility standpoint too. It's when you're supporting a mother, you're supporting a nation, you're supporting the future. Uh,
Right.
it's not just a personal favor you're doing anyone. It is your responsibility to the nation, to your society as well. And it's not something you can opt out of. You know what I mean?
No, no. I mean, and this is life. I mean, we're in education, and we know that education has made changes to accommodate for people's lifestyles. There's so many different modalities and ways to earn your education now. I mean, I feel like those changes, we're slowly starting to make changes there in the workplace, but it's just, to me, I still cannot believe. I mean, I've talked with a good friend of mine that is a new mother. She went back to work at the 12-week mark because she had her regular, like, 6 weeks of maternity leave. She used all of her vacation to get the rest of that time with her new baby. And then she went back to work, and she was commuting. I think it was like 2 hours each way, just putting her baby into daycare. And her team is completely virtual. So there was absolutely no reason. And her boss, even though she requested it, her boss denied her working from home. And to me, I just don't see how that is I just don't even think that that needs to be a conversation. I mean, my husband's European, so I guess I also see the other side where, you get a year,
Yeah.
you keep your same job, you're not worried about it. I just feel like, why is it taking so long for companies to realize this and understand, and again, like you said, it's not only mothers, although I feel like we definitely take
Bear
a
the brunt of
more
it.
of the parental responsibility, but that, I just think it's a natural thing that happens. But it's parents. I mean, we can't just deny that this is the way our world works. People have families. You can't just always expect to have workers that are going to be young and single.
And I think the reason it's taking so long is because you and we became mothers and we sucked it up. It's time to stop that. And it's not about sucking it up. You have to do. When I started interviewing for jobs after I had her, I would make it a point to inform people that I am not going to be less productive, but I do. If I might come in after 9, or if I come before 9, I definitely have to leave before 6. So it's not because if I have a child that is in daycare and I can't leave her for longer than that, etc. So those kinds of boundaries.
You to really make that a priority in your life. I mean, I'm so lucky to be a product of like strong women in my family. So my grandmother, who didn't go to college, but once she had 4 kids back to back, and when they were older, she did become. I think she was working in like a hospital as a assistant or secretary at the time. It might have been called, and I remember her telling me the story where when they offered her the job, she said, if one of my kids is sick or something happens in school or whatever it is, I have to leave, like no questions asked. And so I cannot take this job unless you understand those terms. I mean, she was really strong about it. And I just love that concept. I think you have to really, as a parent, you also have to be honest with yourself and just say, look, this is a priority for me. And, at the end of the day, are you going to be upset about a work thing, or are you going to be upset about a family thing?
Yeah. Yeah, and everything within reason. And if we work together, definitely changes can be made in the workplace. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about our own perception of ourselves as working mothers when we return to work, but there's also a general perception that mom is somehow less, whether less effective, less productive, less creative, less in whatever way when she returns to work after having a child. What do you say to that? What are your thoughts around changing that perception, or whether it needs to be changed?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that change. I read this, I think you had someone in the group had sent around an article about a woman trying to get funding while she was pregnant for her startup.
Yeah.
And I laughed about that because the majority of people didn't give her funding. And they were really saying you should hold off and wait until you have a baby. Maybe you won't be as into your idea. And that she finally found that person.
Right.
And it's that idea where we need to, as mothers, stick up for ourselves and not take that BS, quite honestly. I mean, I think if we keep just allowing it to happen, that's where it doesn't change. And my situation is the perfect example where I was in a bad situation, and it turns out there were plenty of women that I've talked to when I made the decision to leave the job I was with, but it ended up being a man, and now my partner in the consulting business, that was the one who really helped me see that it doesn't have to be like this. And I still laugh about it to this day because we had this conversation, I want to say a couple of weeks ago, where I had to thank him for really like pushing me over that line that I was sitting at for so long. It's just really, so there are people out there, and I think we just have to find those people and come together and really just not take that anymore. And the support of other women groups like what you're putting together, I just think it's so great. And it's not only, I talked to a woman last, or maybe it was even earlier this week. Gosh, the days run together. But she is someone who's struggling having kids, and she's trying for so long, and her kind of beef, if you will, was the amount of people that say to her, oh, well, you put family second because you focused on your career. And she is interested in starting a group that advocates for women, just around the idea of what to do and how to prepare, even if you might not be ready for a family right now, but if you are making that decision later in life, like what kind of consequences that has. And I think that is a really important topic too, and just which women don't, especially at those younger ages, that's just not something you think about at all. I mean, I am so thankful that I ended up, blindly making the decision to go, jump into parenthood at a young age, not knowing that I was going to have the trouble that I had. But imagine if I had waited, I may have not been blessed with my kids. And how many people are going through that So I think just like women coming together, and to me, that's really we're such a strong power.
Yeah,
And I do think I laugh about this all the time with my husband, but I really think there's so much that we can bring and so much potential that we have. We just need to harness it.
absolutely, absolutely. And I'd love to speak with the lady who's trying to do that, because one of the action items that individuals can take to promote supporting mothers in the workplace is when, as you said, when women decide to become mothers, someone needs to sit them down and coach them about a post-baby career. And I definitely love to work with that woman to come up with a checklist of things that, there's a potential to collaborate with other founders who are doing interesting things in the pregnancy space. And part of that, I want this to be something that is offered to pregnant women. Think about your career. These are the sorts of things you need to think about.
No, I actually had already thought that I need to connect you too. So
Yeah. Then my last question is about, your experience, as well as several women who experience similar things in the workplace. How can small businesses, large corporations, society in general, what can they change to help make things easier for moms to return to work and continue to contribute significantly? Not return to work as like a, like at a less somehow level, because women love the work they do. So how do we make sure that they return to contributing significantly in the workplace? Do you have any thoughts, ideas?
I mean, I think this is something we struggle with in the US just because of the way, business, the tax system and the way businesses work is quite different than in European nations. But it is really difficult because businesses, I mean, I worked for a small business, not a large corporation, and you don't have as many resources. So when you lose one person, and, I say that in a, from thinking from the business standpoint as a business owner, whether or not you're losing that person to illness or motherhood or whatever it might be, you don't have necessarily the bandwidth funds to really keep that person on and have someone else in that place. But I think, if they, even in those situations where maybe they don't have all of the resources, keeping an open mind. I mean, I love the idea, and I've seen this now multiple times where women will, share, like job share. And so if they're on, one of them is on maternity leave, like that person picks up the slack. But, I think women also have to be, I think there has to be a trust level there too, because that was I know with my last, with my son, I can't even tell you how stressed I was that I was going to be losing my position, and the things that happened through that process. And that is not a stress that you need as a new mother. So I think there also has to be a trust factor that, if you're putting together some of these ideas, like maybe it's job sharing or again, just being open to different ways to make that work. I think businesses really do have to, I know everyone always says, oh, it's not personal, it's business.
It's a bit of both.
It's, that to me is really difficult because if you don't put in that support and that investment in your workers, they're not going to do the same for you. And so, to me, I just feel there has to be, so, and everyone starts their businesses differently, but I've really been, I mean, Patagonia has like an awesome concept. There's just someone, I read a ton of articles about them, Facebook, I know a few people, dads that work with Facebook and get, paternity leave. I just think that there are plenty of companies that are doing it out there. And as a small business, kind of taking some of those concepts and making it work for you. But yeah, I think sometimes too, we have to be advocates for ourselves and throw back our ideas. And that friend of mine that's a new mom, we had a conversation and she already had started doing her own research, and she went back to her boss and she was like, so here's the deal. I really, she just kind of put her foot down. I really want I think I'm great. I really want to stay here. I really want to be a great employee, but these are some things that I'm going to need to make this work. And I'm willing to come to a compromise and let's do this. And she really had to advocate for herself and come with information and research and, but she did it. And I think we have to do that for ourselves and give them the ideas sometimes that they may not have had.
Right.
But I feel like to me, there's always a way, right? I mean, that's just the way that I look at it. There's always an answer. And I think companies, hopefully they can just be more open to making that work and really creating a strong workforce. There's so many moms that I know that are stay-at-home moms because they struggle with childcare and affordable childcare and trustworthy childcare, you name it. But there are so many moms out there that had wonderful jobs before they stepped into motherhood, and then they had to step out of the workplace. And I know because I'm the job data person that there are so many jobs that are open, and there are so many really wonderful women that could be filling these roles and sharing jobs and working from home and so many other situations. It's just a shame to me to see this happen.
Absolutely. I think so. Every interview I've done this far in this season has come out with like a little idea that I hadn't thought of before. Job sharing is definitely one of them. So I'm going to collect this over a period of time, and hopefully we can actually activate something within the network and do something about this. Fingers crossed.
I'd love to see it. So any other ideas and ways that I can help, let me know.
Yes. This conversation goes a long way. Any other parting thoughts?
There was one question that I know has come up a lot, which was just kind of some advice that you had as a mom. I mean, there's so many times that you get advice as a mom. Don't some of it wanted and not, but that's fine. One that I didn't appreciate at the time was from a stay-at-home mom that said, don't fully step out of the workforce. And I know I didn't appreciate it at the time. I thought it was almost ridiculous because, but I can say that however it may be, not that you have to be working full time, it may just be project work or whatever it is, but keeping a little bit of yourself, you don't realize as you become this identity of mom, like it really does change who you are. You forget a little bit about yourself. And so I didn't look at it as I was going to struggle getting back into the workforce. If I stepped out, I looked at it or the way I look at it is that you need to keep a little bit of yourself. And so if there's a way for you to volunteer, whatever it is, just something that is just for you, that is my advice that I wish I listened to.
I know, and even then it's hard because I've taken a break from my regular professional career and done a few things in the time that I had to take a break. Even then it's hard to return to what you were doing before, but definitely at least you get seen as somebody who is contributing, and you have an identity, and that's important. It's also healthier for your kids to know you're a separate entity from them, because then they can build their own identity independently.
And we're mothers of girls too, so you and I, so we know that there's just this idea, like I feel so lucky now looking back that my mom, she always worked full time. I mean, I don't know how, I really honestly don't know how she did it all of those years, but it helped me become who I am today, and I want them to see that too and understand that they have choices, and whether or not you want those choices, that's another. But I mean, I think that the thing is we have choices and we can be really strong, and I hope to pass that on to them too.
Yeah. My daughter, for now, for instance, she's very, very certain of herself. She's very adamant and very strong in what she has to say, and sometimes it's a pain to deal with it. But at the heart of me, I am so grateful because I don't want her to be a little crybaby. I want her to be able to be assertive. And I know growing up, being assertive was not within my family, but outside of the home, in my schools, in my colleges, it was not seen as something positive. Uh,
No.
as always, having confidence was somehow bad, and having an identity was somehow bad. And I've suffered from it as a result, because I sort of sway between confidence and utter diffidence, and people can't believe it, but it's true. So yeah.
I think just so many, like, we all just, yeah, when we were kids, I think of this all the time. Like, it was children were seen, not heard kind of concept. It was really like you need to follow directions and listen. And so that idea of that child that just maybe didn't go along with that or stood up for themselves, and it may have just been because they wanted to wear that outfit that day and they were not going to take no for an answer. It's funny how that, now I think we're more open to that. And I know with my kids, I say almost on a daily basis, I really like that you're trying to negotiate getting a snack right now, getting a treat right now, but mommy said no, and this is why. And I've even had to look at it, it took me a little while, but it's
Yeah.
to be a really strong asset. And I know my one daughter, I'm like, she can, just really almost get anyone to do what she wants to do. And I think that's awesome.
I think so too. Like, because it's an important perspective. It's important for them to have a voice, and I don't do it very well, but often I will try not to say things like, "You can't do it because I said so."
Right.
I really try. I don't do it all the time, because it makes such a difference in the way they perceive the world. It's not somebody's power over you, but a negotiation, or because of circumstance, or because they know a little bit better than you. That's a
Right.
much better approach than because I said so. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thanks for your time, and thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate all you're doing, and good luck with your new adventures.
So much.
And let's stay in touch. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you.